I feel like we reconnected because a couple of months ago, I think you asked me about The Crown, and my son started a Netflix subscription, and I was like, ooh, can we get a profile on your account? And he said, sure. And so we immediately started watching The Crown again. And I had forgotten that you had asked me that question. And then my husband and I were like going, oh my gosh, I really think that so-and-so, and I want to get ahead of the conversation, but I was just like, I really think so-and-so is the type, la, la, la. I was like, oh, I need to contact Katherine because we started this conversation. And now that I've actually continued to watch it, I bet we could have a better conversation.
Right.
I love that. I reached out to you yesterday and it's like, here we are recording a podcast. We need to be discussing this. And I think other people would be interested in some of me from an Enneagram point of view, you from a homeopathic remedy point of view. I think it would be a very interesting conversation.
I agree.
I have like a little royal family tree written down here. I've got the Queen Mother and George. And I guess we could do his brother.
The one who abdicated the throne.
I think it was Edward, wasn't it? Philip, Elizabeth, Margaret. And then the kids, Charles, Anne, Andrew, and Edward. I have William and Harry down as well. I've got Camilla. I even have like Margaret Thatcher because she was the most recent prime minister that I've been watching.
Oh, yeah. There's a number of homeopaths have written about remedies for Margaret Thatcher.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to say from my point of view, as far as Enneagram typing goes, it's just really conjecture. It's my best guess based off of the pattern of the behaviors. But whatever I am suggesting does not necessarily mean hardcore. This is their Enneagram type, because Enneagram types are based off of motivations, and I'm not having conversations with these people to find out. I'm just really kind of formulating my own opinion. That's why I think this is an interesting conversation, because with homeopathy, it really is symptomatic. Like you really are just looking at outside observations.
Well, not just outside observations. It's also about their emotions and their feelings.
That's true.
Watching The Crown, I can only guess, just like you, what they must be feeling. And so, my recommendation for Queen Elizabeth is probably not going to be the same as Peter Fisher, who was the homeopath. Queen. He knew more about her than I ever will.
Yes, because we also have to remember that propaganda is a real thing.
Especially with The Crown.
Right. And so how much do we really know? How much capital T truth do we know? And how much of it is the truth that they want to portray? And not that doesn't happen, in all governments, but yeah.
Right. And The Crown isn't 100% fact-based. They took some liberties. Because I was looking up and reading about it. I was watching it. I'm like, I wonder if this is all true. Should I be believing this is all true? Because how would they know this? Because the Queen was so secretive.
Right.
She never did an interview. Ever. She never did an interview.
So let me start with Philip.
Okay. And what we know about him from
based
the show.
On the series, the way he's portrayed, or in whatever research that you've done. I haven't been like a royal family, fan.
Me either.
So I think this has made it a little bit more interesting as far as like coming from someone who wasn't like gaga goo goo over the royal family as some of the people who I grew up with were like, oh, Princess Diana.
Right. And on the other hand, also, you're not like, you don't hate the royal family either.
Right. Just
it's
neutral.
The opposite.
Just very a neutral sentiment. Yes. So what do we know about Philip?
He seemed to me to be not as rigid as the Queen. He was a bit of a free spirit. I mean, he wanted to fly airplanes. He flew airplanes. We know that. I believe that's true because it's a pretty consistent thread through the story. He flew Charles to school. Remember that? So we know that there was that sort of free spirit nature of him. Maybe he needed a bird remedy. I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
He really liked flying.
He did. That episode when he wanted to meet with the pilots not the pilots, the moon landing, and then was like sorely disappointed.
Yes.
Yes, I thought that was really interesting. And now in season 5, I'm not quite finished with the season. He's really into the carriage driving. It's like he's taken up a new hobby. Yeah, some of my observations. So maybe I should say what I believe. I believe he's a type 8 with a 7 wing. Definitely 7 wing in his younger years when he was more free-spirited, more impulsive
Mm-hmm.
and self-focused. I definitely see the 7 wing there, but as he's gotten older, he's has more of the 8 energy where he's just taking control, but he's doing it behind the scenes because he knows that that's his role. And an 8 going into, I would say, more of the 9 wing as he's aging. And so that 9 wing is more going with the flow, but he still exerts his power and his control, especially in, seasons 4 and 5 when Diana comes on scene, where he's like, yes, this is the one you're going to marry. Like he takes it upon himself to vet her and say, hey, I want you to come with me stalking. And so he takes it upon himself to do his own vetting and then says, hey, this is the person that you're going to marry, at least in the series.
Right.
We'll keep sprinkling that caveat in. And then at the end, when in season 5, he's basically telling Diana, this is what I expect of you. You need to do this. And if you don't do it, it's not going to end well. I'm trying to think of the line he said. This isn't a family, it's a system. That's very much a type 8 mentality. And the only person that matters is the person who is the oxygen that we breathe. And you need to remember who that is. Of course, he's talking about the queen. And that's a type 8 going into that type 2 space of being supportive and being helpful and having the empathy of, and almost the manipulation that sometimes type 2s are known for, emotional manipulation to make sure the system is working and that everybody is, quote unquote, getting along and doing what's best for the system.
Okay. Interesting.
Feeling pretty confident that Philip is an 8, being able to see, kind of view his lifespan on the crown in the series. Like when he first came into the royal family, just the struggles that he had with not having a title, of feeling controlled, feeling like he had to stand behind her instead of being the one that was in front. That struggle of being a leader in the marriage, but being a subordinate, that was a huge struggle for him. And the only control that he had over his life was his extramarital life.
Well, I said maybe a bird remedy for him because of this desire to fly and to be free, but yet being tethered. And I thought about, maybe it's a bird that doesn't fly, because there are a few birds that don't fly.
Like an emu, maybe?
Yeah, an emu or a roadrunner or a, ostrich, penguin. But when I look in my repertory under desire to fly, it's kind of, I think, a small rubric, but there are 3 birds in there. There are only 6 remedies. There are 3 birds. So one of them is Cygnus cygnus, which is a whooper swan. And there's a lot of grief associated with that and loss. And that doesn't seem to suit him. And then there's one called Cathartis aura, which is the turkey vulture. Yeah. There's this kind of being an unseen force. So that's a possibility for him. And there's a certain amount of catharsis that comes with this. Interestingly, the name is Cathartis aura, but there's a certain amount of catharsis with it, which I think he does for himself. And then there's a peregrine falcon, which is trained to behave a certain way. So, yeah. And without knowing more about him, it's hard to know, but I'd probably zero in on one of those 2 birds for him.
The last 2, the turkey vulture.
The turkey vulture and the peregrine falcon.
Yes, that's very interesting. I got chills that just went down my legs.
Yeah. I'm more inclined about the unseen force because he's sort of like this person behind, but he did exercise his freedom, whereas the peregrine falcons don't exercise their freedom very much.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
they were definitely trained and tied and only did what they were told.
But yeah, Philip was not one that at first I even thought to type until I was messaging you and I said, oh yeah, Philip said this. That really explained what I was feeling about the queen. And I was like, oh, well, what type is Philip?
Yeah, what kind of man would take this position? Although, honestly, she wasn't expected to be the queen that young. Her father died young. So,
Or at all.
yeah. Well, originally,
go
but I
back-
think she knew already by the time she married him that she was going to be.
Yeah. But I mean, like before King Edward abdicated, like this
Right.
wasn't even supposed to be that line.
No, it wasn't her path.
Yeah. Yeah. It made me sad. There was one episode when she was with the horses and the dogs, and she was like, I just wonder if, what my path would have been had he not abdicated. Like, would she be, with the horses and doing something more along those lines with animals?
Right. Right.